Welcome to this episode of the story. Have you subscribed yet? Chapter 83, The Crisis of the Spiritual Equilibrators and the Desperate Counterattack. In Linksea Town, the atmosphere of the confrontation was extremely tense. The powerful spiritual power coercion of the spiritual equilibrators hung over everyone like dark clouds. The spiritual equilibrators were dressed in strange costumes, with spiritual power swirling around their bodies, exuding an undeniable majesty. Although the cultivators in Linksea Town were slightly inferior in strength, they all had determined expressions and showed no sign of backing down as they were ready to protect Sumo. The leader of the spiritual equilibrators looked around the people of Linksea Town with cold eyes and emphasized again, Sumo has the reverse, time spiritual power, which has already threatened the spiritual power balance of the spirit fantasy realm. He must come with us today. If you insist on blocking us, don't blame us for being ruthless. An elder from Linksea Town stepped forward, glaring at the leader of the spiritual equilibrators, and said, "It's absurd that you conclude that Sumo has disrupted the spiritual power balance just based on speculation. Sumo has always been law, abiding, and has made a lot of contributions to Linksea Town. Aren't you afraid of being unfair by acting like this?" The leader of the spiritual equilibrators snorted disdainfully and waved his hand. In an instant, the spiritual equilibrators assumed a battle formation. Powerful spiritual power fluctuations spread out, and the surrounding air seemed to be ignited. Seeing this, the cultivators in Linksea Town also unleashed their respective spiritual power techniques, ready to fight to the death. Just as the conflict was about to break out, Dear spiritual equilibrators, I understand your emphasis on the spiritual power balance, but please give me a chance to prove my innocence. If it's really because of me that the spiritual power is unbalanced, I'm willing to accept punishment. The leader of the spiritual equilibrators remained unmoved and said, no need to say more, just come with us. As he spoke, he raised his hand and shot a beam of spiritual power towards Sumu. Sumu quickly circulated the reverse, time spiritual power, and the power of the seed, condensing stage of the spirit, gathering realm, and used the reverse, time guardian shield. A dazzling multicolored light flashed, and he successfully blocked this attack. The spiritual power beam collided with the shield, bursting out a strong spiritual power impact, and the ground around was shaken and cracked. Seeing this, the cultivators in Linksea Town launched attacks one after another, trying to prevent the spiritual equilibrators from taking Sumu away. For a moment, various spiritual power lights intertwined, and shouts of battle filled the air. However, the spiritual equilibrators were powerful and coordinated well, and the cultivators in Linksea Town gradually fell into a disadvantage. The spiritual power moves of the spiritual equilibrators came like a violent storm, and many cultivators in Linksea Town were injured and fell to the ground. Seeing that the people of Linksea Town were in danger because of him, Sumu felt extremely guilty. He knew that if this continued, Linksea Town would surely be severely damaged. After thinking for a moment, Sumu shouted, "Stop! I'll go with you, but you must promise to spare the people of Linksea Town." The leader of the spiritual equilibrators' mouth curled slightly, and he said, "As long as you come with us obediently, they will be fine." Just as the spiritual equilibrators were about to take Sumo away, a figure swept over like a gust of wind. It was Sumu's grandfather. The grandfather looked anxious with anger and worry in his eyes. He let out a loud shout, "If you want to take my grandson away, you have to pass me first." With that, the grandfather unleashed his most powerful spiritual power technique, and a surging spiritual power torrent rushed towards the spiritual equilibrators. The leader of the spiritual equilibrators' face changed slightly. He didn't expect an unexpected obstacle to appear. He quickly directed the spiritual equilibrators to resist the grandfather's attack. The spiritual power torrent collided with the defensive spiritual power of the spiritual equilibrators, producing a huge rumbling sound, and the entire Linksea Town trembled. Although the grandfather was no match for the spiritual equilibrators in strength, with his firm determination to protect his home and grandson, he engaged in a life and death struggle with the spiritual equilibrators. Seeing this, Sumu took the opportunity to shout to the people of Linksea Town, "Everyone, evacuate quickly! Don't make unnecessary sacrifices." Reminded by Sumu, the cultivators in Linksea Town began to evacuate the townspeople in an orderly manner, and Sumu fully unleashed the power of the reverse, time, spiritual power, and the seed, condensing stage of the spirit, gathering realm, charging towards the spiritual equilibrators, trying to assist his grandfather. Sumu used the reverse, time retrospective slash, and a spiritual power blade containing powerful time, force slash towards the spiritual equilibrators. Sensing the power of this strike, the spiritual equilibrators concentrated their spiritual power to resist. The spiritual power blade collided with the spiritual power shields of the spiritual equilibrators, bursting out a dazzling light. In the reflection of the light, the figures of Sumu and his grandfather seemed so small, yet so determined. However, the spiritual equilibrators were ultimately too powerful. The grandfather gradually couldn't hold on under the attacks of the spiritual equilibrators. He was injured in many places, and his clothes were stained with blood. Sumu was extremely anxious. He knew that he couldn't let this go on. So Sumu brought the power of the reverse. Time spiritual power fused with the spiritual spring to its limit and used an enhanced version of the reverse, time retrospective slash again. This time, the power of the spiritual power blade was even greater than before, and the surrounding space seemed to be distorted by the power of time. The spiritual equilibrators felt unprecedented pressure. They had to unite and unleash a powerful spiritual power barrier. The spiritual power blades slashed on the barrier, making a harsh sound. The barrier trembled violently, as if it would break at any moment. A hint of surprise flashed in the eyes of the leader of the spiritual equilibrators. He didn't expect Sumu to be able to unleash such a powerful force. Under the impact of Sumu's strike, the formation of the spiritual equilibrators was briefly disrupted, and they were temporarily forced back. Taking this opportunity, Sumu helped his grandfather up and quickly retreated. As he retreated, he observed the movements of the spiritual equilibrators, thinking about countermeasures. After stabilizing his figure, a hint of annoyance flashed in the eyes of the leader of the spiritual equilibrators, and he said, "Kid, you have some skills, but do you think you can escape like this?" With that, the spiritual equilibrators launched another attack, chasing after Sumu and his grandfather. Looking at the approaching spiritual equilibrators, Sumu quickly made a decision in his heart. Taking advantage of his familiarity with the terrain of Linksy Town, he led his grandfather towards a complex area in the town. There were various spiritual power traps and mechanisms which were set up by Linksy Town to resist foreign enemies. Sumu planned to use these terrains to set up time traps and catch the spiritual equilibrators off guard. After arriving at the destination, Sumu quickly circulated the reverse, time spiritual power, and, combined with the surrounding environment, set up powerful time traps one by one. Some traps could slow down the time flow rate of those who stepped in, and some could make time go back, causing heavy damage to the enemies. After setting up the traps, Sumu and his grandfather hid, waiting for the spiritual equilibrators to fall into the traps. Soon, the spiritual equilibrators caught up. They observed the surrounding environment warily, but didn't notice the time traps set by Sumu. When the spiritual equilibrators entered the trap area, they were instantly thrown into chaos. The time flow rate of some spiritual equilibrators slowed down sharply, and their movements became sluggish, as if they were stuck in thick mud. While some spiritual equilibrators experienced time regression, and their spiritual power states returned to what they were a few minutes ago, with a significant reduction in strength. Seizing the opportunity, Sumu used the reverse. Time spiritual power moves again and launched an attack on the trapped spiritual equilibrators. For a moment, lights flashed and spiritual power roared. The spiritual equilibrators suffered heavy losses under the traps and Sumu's attacks. However, the spiritual equilibrators were powerful after all and quickly reacted. They quickly adjusted their tactics and jointly cast a powerful spell, trying to break the traps by force and catch Sumu. The spiritual equilibrators gathered their spiritual power, and a huge spiritual power column shot up into the sky, blasting towards the trap area. Under this powerful spell, the time traps began to show signs of collapse. Sumu felt tremendous pressure. He knew that he was in a desperate situation. Just when he felt despair, a mysterious spiritual power suddenly surged out from the ground of Linksy Town. This spiritual power resonated strongly with Sumu's reverse time spiritual power, as if responding to his plight. An idea flashed in Sumu's mind. he quickly guided this mysterious spiritual power to fuse with the reverse, time spiritual power. In an instant, Sumu's strength was greatly enhanced, and he felt an unprecedented powerful force surging in his body. With the help of this mysterious power, Sumu used an even more powerful reverse, time spiritual power move, the reverse, time myriad image break. A huge spiritual power impact containing endless time, force, and mysterious spiritual power swept towards the spiritual Equilibrators. Seeing this, the faces of the spiritual Equilibrators changed greatly. They hurriedly strengthened their defenses, trying to resist this terrifying strike. However, the power of the reverse, time myriad, image break far exceeded their imagination. The spiritual power impact instantly broke through the defenses of the spiritual Equilibrators, catching them off guard. The spiritual Equilibrators were sent flying by this force and fell to the ground, their faces filled with horror. The leader of the spiritual Equilibrators stabilized his figure, his eyes full of shock and unwillingness. He didn't expect Sumo to turn the tables with the help of the mysterious power. But the spiritual Equilibrators didn't give up. They quickly adjusted their tactics and formed a spiritual power blockade circle, trapping Sumu and his grandfather in the middle to prevent them from escaping. Looking at the spiritual power blockade circle around him, Sumu knew that this time the spiritual Equilibrators wouldn't give him a chance easily. The two sides fell into a stalemate, and neither dared to act rashly. During the stalemate, Sumu didn't give up looking for a breakthrough. He carefully observed the operation rules of the spiritual power blockade circle, trying to find its weak point. After some observation, Sumu found that the spiritual power fluctuation in one corner of the spiritual power blockade circle was relatively weak, seemingly a flaw in the entire blockade circle. Overjoyed, Sumu concentrated all his strength, preparing to attack this weak point. Sumu took a deep breath, fused the reverse, time spiritual power, the spiritual spring spiritual power, and the mysterious spiritual power together, and used his most powerful strike, the reverse, time-space, rending slash. A spiritual power blade shining with multicolored light slashed towards the weak point of the spiritual power blockade circle. Where the spiritual power blade passed, the space seemed to be torn apart, and the power of time raged within. The spiritual Equilibrators noticed Sumu's intention and increased the spiritual power output to the weak point one after another, trying to reinforce the blockade circle. However, this strike of Sumo condensed all his strength and was irresistible. The spiritual power blade heavily slashed on the weak point of the spiritual power blockade circle, bursting out on earth, shattering Jusang. After the light dissipated, a huge gap appeared in the spiritual power blockade circle. Seizing the opportunity, Sumu quickly broke through the blockade circle with his grandfather. Seeing this, the leader of the spiritual Equilibrators became furious and shouted, "Chase! Don't let them get away!" The spiritual Equilibrators immediately launched a pursuit. They were extremely fast, chasing after Sumu and his grandfather like ghosts. Sumu and his grandfather fought while fleeing, and the situation was extremely critical. During the escape, Sumu accidentally entered an ancient ruins. The ruins exuded a mysterious aura, and a faint spiritual power mist filled the surroundings. An idea flashed in Sumu's mind. He knew that this might be an opportunity to get rid of the pursuit of the spiritual Equilibrators. So, without hesitation, he led his grandfather into the ruins. The mysterious power in the ruins interfered with the tracking of the spiritual Equilibrators. The spiritual Equilibrators lingered outside the ruins, unable to determine the whereabouts of Sumu and his grandfather for a while. Sumu and his grandfather moved forward cautiously in the ruins. The architectural style in the ruins was unique, and the walls were engraved with various strange runes and patterns. Sumo curiously observed these runes and patterns, trying to find some clues. Suddenly, Sumo discovered a mysterious stone tablet. The runes on the stone tablet were flickering with a faint light, as if conveying some kind of information. Sumo stepped forward and carefully studied the runes on the stone tablet. After some efforts, Sumu actually understood the method of combining the reverse, time spiritual power, with the space spiritual power from it. Overjoyed, he knew that this would be the key to his strength improvement. Sumu couldn't wait to try to fuse the reverse, Time's spiritual power with the space spiritual power. As the spiritual powers merged, he felt a new power being born in his body. This power contained both the mystery of the reverse, Time's spiritual power, and the transformation of the space spiritual power, greatly increasing his strength. Just as Sumo understood the method of combining the reverse, Time's spiritual power with the space spiritual power, the spiritual equilibrators broke through the interference of the ruins and chased into the ruins. Seeing Sumu, a hint of greed flashed in the eyes of the leader of the spiritual equilibrators, and he said, "Kid, you can't escape today. Hand over the reverse, Time's spiritual power obediently, and perhaps we'll spare your life." Sumo looked at the spiritual equilibrators fearlessly and said, "You're dreaming. Today, I'll let you know that I'm not someone to be bullied." With that, Sumo used the spiritual power move combining reverse, time, and space. The reverse, time-space prison. Sumo circulated his spiritual power, and the surrounding space was instantly distorted. Streams of time, force merged into it, forming a huge spiritual power prison, trapping some of the spiritual equilibrators inside. The trapped spiritual equilibrators struggled in the prison but couldn't break free from its bondage. Seeing this, the face of the leader of the spiritual equilibrators changed greatly. He didn't expect Sumu's strength to increase so much in such a short time. He quickly directed the other spiritual equilibrators to launch an attack, trying to break the prison and catch Sumu. Sumu skillfully used the power of the combination of reverse, time, and space, constantly changing the position and shape of the prison, and at the same time counterattacked the spiritual equilibrators. For a moment, spiritual power lights flashed in the ruins, and the battle was extremely fierce. During the battle, Sumu gradually mastered the application skills of the power of the combination of reverse, time, and space. He used a move called reverse, time-space shuffle, and his body instantly disappeared from the original place and appeared behind the spiritual equilibrators, launching a surprise attack. The spiritual equilibrators were caught off guard by Sumu's sudden attack and fell into chaos. Taking this opportunity, Sumu launched another attack and successfully got rid of the pursuit of the spiritual equilibrators. After getting rid of the pursuit, Sumu didn't relax his vigilance. He knew that the spiritual equilibrators wouldn't give up easily and would surely continue the hunting down. So, Sumo decided to continue deepening into the ruins, looking for a way to leave, and at the same time exploring the secrets hidden in the ruins to enhance his strength and deal with possible future crises. Sumu and his grandfather continued to move forward in the ruins. They found that the spiritual power in the ruins was getting stronger and stronger, as if guiding them to a certain place. As they deepened into the ruins, a spiritual power altar appeared in front of them. On the altar was placed a mysterious artifact, which emitted a powerful spiritual power fluctuation, as if calling out to Sumu. The story continues. More exciting content is coming up. Subscribe as soon as possible.